Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hi Stu, how are you?
Hi Lorraine, I'm very good. You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
Good.
We thought we would just do a Conveyancing Matters YouTube chat on something that's been in the news quite a lot. The stamp duty land tax speculation, Stu. Is it
Yeah.
helpful? Spoiler alert, no.
Is it helpful? Probably not. Yeah,
So
look,
fill us in, Stu. What caught your eye as a law firm owner who's business depends on a constant, regular, sensible flow of property transactions. What's
well,
the issue
yeah.
around the
If,
SDLT
if if
speculation?
only over the last few years with what conveyancers at the coalface have had to deal with, and I suppose that anybody new to the profession and those older, probably the biggest thing we could talk about the Building Safety Act, obviously, but the biggest thing probably over recent time has been the stamp duty holidays and the influx of work that's brought. So we thought we were kind of maybe out the mire on that one, but there was a recent article in the Guardian where yeah, it has been muted that potential stamp duty for purchasers could be abolished and moved on to sellers.
Yeah, and they're also sort of suggesting maybe a new sort of property tax to replace council tax. But
Yeah.
the big one, of course, is these sort of trailed potential
Mm.
changes to stamp duty land tax. Now, of course, as other commentators have said, Stu, a fairly common trick of the Treasury and government departments these days is to sort of trail an idea, see how it's sort of received in the media, and then allow that sort of kickback to influence policy. Personally, I think it's a very poor way of of determining on policy on something as important as the property market to the UK. But we're expecting a budget, of course, in October. And this idea, as you've said, Stu, that stamp duty land tax on purchases might be sort of shifted and the onus perhaps placed on sellers. But of course, it's just that massive uncertainty and that unhelpfulness that's really just does nothing to assist in the short term, does it?
Well, it doesn't because, of course, I think this has started off with one article that the rest of the press have kind of picked up on, and it's escalated from there. Now it's been across a lot of the conveyancing sort of publications and so on and so forth. So it is difficult because, again, as lawyers, we're acting for clients, and of course, those clients will ask questions on stamp duty. Do we know what's going to happen? As if we're sitting sort of in government with full knowledge. Well, of course, we don't. But, you know, obviously, if this was to happen, there would be a stamp duty deadline of sorts. And of course, it would be a massive cultural change to the way we do conveyancing. So it would be certainly interesting. Whether it's a good thing might be open to sort of another discussion. Is it actually a good idea in theory? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is it may well be, and there's certainly plenty of commentators out there that are suggesting stamp duty land tax
Well,
needs overhaul.
it would
We
certainly make it easier for buyers to get onto the property ladder, wouldn't it? It'd be a cost that would be
100%.
taken away. So from that point of view, you can't really sort of argue with that theory. Um, but in terms of our conveyancing hat on, it would be very difficult to implement, wouldn't it?
Well, and I think the issue is, and we've said this really since we started doing Conveyancing Matters too, that stamp duty land tax has become very complex. There are sort of,
Very.
probably now in excess of sort of 50 odd sort of reliefs and exemptions. It's not a specialist area for non-contentious property lawyers. Good old days of stamp duty, we
Yeah.
just used to sort of calculate a figure and make sure it
Yeah.
was sent off to, well, the inland revenue as it was then. And this has become a very, very complex area. So I'm sure on the one hand, property lawyers would sort of rejoice if it became simpler. But I think
But
I
I'm not
just
sure it's
have,
going to become simpler, though, is it?
well, that's the issue.
I
And I
don't
have
think it
very
becomes
little
simpler.
confidence. I have very
No.
little confidence that any government of any political hue, I might add, would introduce something sort of sensibly and in a measured way, because really governments of both colours, Stu, have got very little. There's very little evidence that they listen to the people at the coalface
Yeah.
in relation to these proposed changes. I mean, how many budgets have we had recently where stamp duty, land tax changes have been made and they've been introduced like the next day or
Yeah, yeah.
overnight?
Yeah, look, we could talk about stuff. It always amazes me that we talk about a deadline being, completion. A deadline of exchange would be a lot better because you've then got more time to bring that in over a staggered sort of period of time. But it does worry me because I think stamp duty is an easy hit, isn't it, for government? Whether that could be implemented that quickly, whether Labour would still be in power by the time that was implemented, I think there's a lot of questions that you could throw at it, but it's a scary one again.
Yeah, I think it is. And of course, us and other commentators, we take airtime and valuable long time talking about it. And of course, the backlash might be such that it isn't introduced. But I think the concern is that
I don't think there would be backlash though.
Well, I think potentially there might be.
From conveyancers potentially, but would that backlash
Well,
outweigh?
no, we wouldn't be listened to be fair.
No,
I think the
exactly.
concern, I think my concern would be if there's, buyers, particularly at the higher end of the market, might just hold off. So the market might actually, go quieter, particularly at the higher end.
This is the danger of releasing this information now, of course, isn't it? And coupled with the fact that clients are just going to inundate us, asking us, what's going on, what do we think? And as always, we're not politicians, we're not accountants, so we're not qualified to comment on either. And without information at hand, you can't advise a client on any of these subjects.
No, absolutely not. But I think it might, if it carries on being, as a potential sort of issue in the budget, I think it might distort the market a bit. I say particularly at the higher end, because I think buyers might just hold back and say, well, actually, if we can, if there's a possibility we might avoid paying an enormous chunk of stamp duty land tax, well, we're not going to go into the market until.
When you say a possibility, I think it would be a certainty. You've only got to look at when they paused stamp duty, the volume of transactions that increased and what we had to deal with then. I think invariably, if would-be buyers knew that was on the horizon and a likely scenario, I would say it's almost a certainty that it would actually reduce.
Yeah, who's not going to hold fire on a purchase with a view to potentially saving a great big chunk of money?
Absolutely.
But of course, the other side of the coin is, what does this mean? And you've touched on it already, Stu, but maybe to sort of conclude this chat really, but what does this type of really unhelpful speculation mean for conveyancers today? And I think a really important point is for conveyancers, maybe, and I'm always loath to suggest that conveyancers put even more in their standard letters and standard reports, but maybe stick something on their website and say, and maybe acknowledge that there have been sort of news reports and suggestions around changes to stamp duty, land tax, but you're not able to comment, and you can't comment on timing. And as you've said, it's absolutely in the hands of the government to try to sort of get ahead of that complaint curve.
Absolutely. 100%.
So
you're going to get asked about it. Yeah. I mean, a lot of law firms now have social media platforms where they can release information on, but I just think getting the message out there that, nothing at the moment is a certainty. And until such time as we know otherwise, we can only advise you on the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the problem, because if something changes and somebody's paid something today that they wouldn't have needed to pay if they'd sorted it out tomorrow, that's, of course, the massive problem.
Absolutely. That is the problem, isn't it? You're quite right. If you stay completely silent, the danger is, you get it in the neck that, well, had we have known this was a possibility, we might not have gone ahead on this date.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, it's always, clients have classic 2020 hindsight, don't they?
Absolutely.
We tell them about stuff and they carry on. But of course, if we haven't told them, they say, oh, well, I wouldn't have carried on. So whilst I'm never a fan of suggesting that firms get onto speculation bandwagons, however, I think this is sufficiently potentially significant that firms might actually want to consider putting something out there to say, we don't know. And as you've rightly said, Stu, all we can do is advise you on the figures. These may change, and the responsibility for payment might change at short notice, and we have no control and advance notice. And that's perhaps the message.
Yeah. And you never know your luck. Maybe that they're going to take stamp duty and throw it out from conveyancers.
Maybe.
You never have to deal with it again. It's going to become an accounting issue. Sellers will pay for it. based on profit, and we don't ever have to touch it again. No SDLT submissions, or am I dreaming?
No, you've been drinking.
Drinking, sorry,
I
drinking.
think
Yeah,
I think that's an important and significant
yeah,
distinction.
yeah.
And I think before you embarrass yourself further on a public platform such as YouTube, Stu.
I've done it before.
Yeah, exactly. I saw your tattoos. I saw you get your tattoos out. And if anybody's looking, go and look for clothes in the office on our YouTube channel, because that was one to behold. I might even put it up again because that was one of my.
Don't you dare.
So on that bombshell, is SDLT speculation helpful? No.
Absolutely not.
But should conveyancers maybe think about trailing it and commenting? I suggest possibly yes. Take care, Stu.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.